It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm representing the company together with Martin Eriksson, CEO, and Jakob Testa, Chief Financial Officer. I think there are some of the members of our team in. Hello. Nice to see you here. Hamlet BioPharma is a very interesting organization, and we have been quite successful. I look forward to summarizing our progress to you today. The organization builds on a discovery-intense culture. We have a very rich patent portfolio, between 60 and 100 patents currently. We also have built an in-house organization, a drug development platform that allows us as scientists, together with the financial and legal, to take these discoveries all the way to the clinic. And we have succeeded in doing that in 3 indications, as I will show you today. So the progress I will describe is successful development of our clinical trial programs, 3 phase 2 trials with positive data, 1 in bladder cancer, 1 in bacterial infections, and 1 in a pain syndrome. I know there are several of the speakers here who represent companies interested in pain. We also have developed productive collaborations for commercialization, have had significant international media coverage, our communications program, and significant progress in the pipeline. As I said, we have a very rich patent portfolio. So the phase 2 trials where we have positive data are bladder cancer, bladder pain syndrome, and recurrent acute cystitis. And this exemplifies our 2 main areas of activity. We focus on new drugs against cancer and on new approaches to treating bacterial infections based on immunotherapy. These are areas where we have researched extensively over the years and have a lot of molecular insights that we can now turn into new drug candidates. So for bladder cancer, successful development of our lead compound, alpha-1H, which is a peptide oleic acid complex with very strong anti-tumor activity against many different tumor cells. We chose bladder cancer, of course, for its relevance and also for the need of new compounds to treat this type of cancer. We have treated patients with non-muscle invasive bladder cancer, 6 installations during 1 month. We performed placebo-controlled randomized studies and a dose escalation study. And the summary of this work, which has been published recently, shows that we have a significant reduction in the number of tumors and in tumor size in 88% of the treated patients receiving the higher dose and 47% of tumors treated with the lower dose. We have had no drug-related side effects in these patients, and are delighted to say that we have received fast-track status from the FDA for the treatment of non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. Just an example of how we measure the tumors. Not many groups do this. We actually have visuals of the tumor before and after treatment. This is taken through a cystoscope. I think you can appreciate the tumor area here and the lack of a reduction in tumor, also with a measuring rod that allows us to actually quantify the change in surface area. At the highest dose, we saw examples of patients where the tumor was actually removed. I think it's encouraging to actually see what the drug is doing. By quantifying, as I said, the change in tumor size, here you have to know that good activity is a reduction, right? It's a reduction in tumor size. So in the placebo group, there is very little response. In the low dose, about half of the patients are responding, 47%, as I said. At the higher dose, 88%, and a very high frequency in the highest dose. I'd like to draw your attention to this kind of analysis. In cancer, you talk about complete responders, partial responders, and non-responders. And of course, with increasing dose, we also have an increasing frequency of complete responders and partial responders, which is quite encouraging. I'd now like to mention about the other projects, the infection-related projects, where we are using an IL-1 receptor antagonist to inhibit the cytokine IL-1, which is a key to the response to infection in kidneys, in the bladder, responses to bacterial infection, and where we, as I said, have positive results. It comes as no surprise to you that I'm going to talk about the worldwide problem of infections and antibiotic resistance. And usually when we talk about therapeutic alternatives to address this question, this disaster, international disaster, most scientists come up with new drugs. Of course, that's very important. New drugs to kill the bacteria, to target the bacteria. But this is not our approach. We have extensively investigated the immune response to infection and have been able to pinpoint molecules of the host defense that can be used as targets. So we're actually showing that immunotherapy can be useful as an alternative to antibiotics. And of course, the world map is familiar to you. This is Europe, with Southern Europe having very high frequencies of resistant bacteria. Scandinavia still being less so, but in the area of urinary tract infection, about 60% of primary care isolates have resistance. So this is something we're very proud of, because we have shown and recently published a study where we have compared in patients with recurrent acute cystitis our immunomodulation therapy to antibiotics. So we announced positive results from a phase 2 clinical trial, randomized trial, where patients were treated either with anakinra or with nitrofurantoin, which is the drug of choice, the antibiotic of choice. Both treatment effectively reduced the symptoms and recurrence rate, improved the quality of life for the treated patients, and we have a lot of molecular markers that we are working on currently to add to this portfolio of markers. This is conceptually very important. It's really the first time that immunotherapy is shown to have similar efficiency at antibiotics. And it's also, I think it's an inspiration to think of immunotherapy against infection as an alternative or a complement to antibiotics to reduce the need for antibiotic treatment, reduce the selective pressure on antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and also, of course, the microbiome and the side effects of antibiotics that we are so aware of. I think everybody has heard a lot about this before, but we actually have something new here. In animal models, in experimental models, we've also tested this approach to antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Very interesting data suggesting that immunotherapy is active, not just in reducing inflammation, but also enhancing the clearance of bacteria from the tissues. We're not quite sure how that happens, but of course it's inspiring for future clinical studies. The second phase 2 study with positive results in this category of our infection category are patients with bladder pain syndrome. This is sort of the most, how should I say, the most chronic outcome of recurrent infections that are problematic enough. And these patients suffer from severe pain. They are very difficult to treat. Morphine is used, or removing the bladder, which is not always successful. So this is a category of patients that have very few options. We saw that their tissues contain the cytokine interleukin-1. So Dr. Björn Wult, a urologist who is working very closely with us, suggested that we should try in a trial of bladder pain syndrome, anakinra, which is an inhibitor of IL-1. So IL-1 treatment of bladder pain syndrome is successful. About half the patients are improved, and we are currently continuing a phase 2 study with a placebo-controlled part. Now to the commercial development. We have, since about 6 months, developed contacts and collaborations with 2 international companies who are serving as champions for our cause in relation to Big Pharma and other contacts. This has been very productive, and the recent positive phase 2 data puts us in a renewed emphasis on the portfolios. We have also had international media writing about us. In September, The Economist, that most of you know as a leading international journal, published an article on breast milk, which is the origin of the Hamlet molecule, mentioning and describing us and the progress. On November 4th, we featured in CEO of World Magazine and Pulse 2, which are renowned for their interviews with companies and spreads the word about us. We have a very active policy for investor relations that I'd like to draw your attention to. In addition to quarterly report briefings that we always do, we do monthly updates online with investors on the company, where members of the group that work with the company present their work, present the technologies, present the questions that they work with. And this has been very highly appreciated. We have had between 100 and 200 persons attending those presentations over the last few months. And finally, our pipeline, our rich pipeline, where the projects I've talked to are at the top, but where there is also a number of interesting molecules for other cancer indications, for pain and nerve activation, for the prevention of infection and inflammation. And we are looking forward to taking the pipeline further towards the clinic. So, in summary, I hope I have convinced you that Hamlet BioPharma is an interesting company with a robust pipeline. Our commitment to innovation and cutting-edge research, I think, is well documented. We have a very strong international position. And I've shown you some examples of new therapies that we have successfully developed. In addition, the pipeline and the drug candidates are something that we look forward to communicating with you successively in the future. And the international firms have made us very visible internationally, and the activity level is very high. So keep an interest, keep an eye on Hamlet Pharma. We have an annual general meeting tomorrow where we will be looking at a decision to start a new round of funding. And provided that that goes through, you will hear more about us soon. The team is the key. We have an amazing team, a very horizontal organization, passion and lots of brilliance. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Please come and join me.
Yes.
Great, we have some questions for you.
Great.
How is the search for partners going?
It's very exciting, actually. I think before we started these partnerships, we might have been visible, but to a much more limited extent. And the response has been very good. We are quite excited.
Can you tell us a little bit about the
response? No names.
No names, but what kind of feedback do you get?
We get... the primary topic is alpha-1H, obviously, since that's the compound that has received fast-track designation. I think there's a lot of interest in our approach to bladder cancer therapy. I didn't talk so much about that, but we are focusing on early bladder cancer. While patients are waiting for surgery, the initial time when there is really no other option than waiting. Because our drug is very non-toxic, it offers a supplement there, as well as, of course, for more serious disease. There's some data that we recently published on the immune response to our drug, which is very similar to BCG, which is one of the main drugs for bladder cancer. So there are many things talking in our favor at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Great. We have one question. Maybe you kind of answered this, but perhaps you can develop a little bit about these. I mean, where do you see the best opportunity within these three main indications?
I don't like to think of it that way. I mean, you're supposed to be reductionist, but when you look at the wealth of information and the wealth of data that we have, I think the question is how should we get the money to explore these? I mean, phase 2 data in 3 indications, how many biotech companies are looking at that reality?
Well, I think that is a way to end your presentation.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much.